Hi, welcome to Teacher Jeff, free online reviewer. Today, we will focus on professional education topics to help you prepare for your licensure examination for teachers. So, we will have our lesson on assessment of learning. So, the learning topics we will cover for today will include the measures of central tendency and the range. So, that will include the mean, the median when it's odd and even, the mode when it's unimode, bimode, multimode, or no mode, and of course, the last but not the least, the range. So let's begin with the introduction of the measures of central tendency and the range, the mean, median, mode, and range. So let's begin with our first measure of central tendency, the mean. So what is mean? The mean is a total of all values divided by the number of values. So to make it easier for us to remember, let's go ahead and get an example. So we have a table here which includes the student's name and the scores. So we basically have 5 students: Aryan, Brian, Jeffrey, Ryan, and Sam. And we also have the scores: 35, 40, 50, 45, and 40 respectively. So now how are we going to get the mean? So from the definition, it says we get the total of all the values. So that means we simply have to get the sum of all the scores, 5 scores, okay? And we divide by the number of values. So there are 5 values or 5 scores for 5 different students. So after getting the sum, the total of the scores, then we follow it by dividing it by 5. Okay, so does it look familiar? Of course it is. So mean is basically, just to make it easier for you to remember, mean is just basically the average. So when you hear the mean, when the word mean is measured in the licensure examination for teachers, so you simply have to get the average. Okay. Next, let's go ahead and talk about the median. What is a median? So the median is the value separating the higher half from the lower half of a data sample. So let's go ahead and use the same table here. So how are we going to separate this? Okay, so of course, if you want to separate a data sample, what we have to do is first write them down. Okay, so because we want to identify the one that separates the higher half from the lower half. Okay, so you can arrange it either ascending or in descending order. So once you have arranged this, you have to figure out what separates the lower half from the upper half. As you can see here, 35, 40 is the lower half for ascending, 45 to 50 is the upper half. So of course, the middle part, or the one that separates these two numbers, is 40. As you can see, whether it's ascending or descending, you would still get the same value. Okay? So, but not all the time, by the way. So in this case, the middlemost number, or the median, is the value of 40. Okay? So that separates the value. And take note, this particular example, we were able to get the median easier or easily by visual inspection because the data sample that we have is odd. So there's even numbers at the bottom or the lower half, and there's also even numbers at the upper half. So of course there will be an odd or one number that will always be at the center. Okay, so just remember, just like we mentioned earlier, when we speak about median, we talk about the middlemost value. So median, mid, mid, middle, mid, mid, middle, middlemost. So that's median. Okay. So let's go ahead and get another example. So earlier we only have 5 examples. So that's actually an odd data sample. And now let's go ahead and have 6. Okay, so how are we going to do that? Still, we arrange it either in ascending or descending order. So once you would actually be able to notice here that there are actually 2 numbers in the middle, the numbers 40 and 45. So what you have to do in order for you to get the median is you simply have to get the average of the two numbers, and the result or the average becomes the median. Okay, so 40 plus 45 divided by 2, then that's how you're able to get the median for this particular data sample. Okay, so now you know how to get the median when you have odd data sample and even data sample. Okay, so now let's proceed to mode. What is a mode? Let's define it. The value that appears most often or most frequent. Okay, so let's go ahead and get a sample data here. So we have here 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we have 7 students here, and of course we have 7 data samples. So how are we going to identify the most frequent? You can basically arrange it if you want in ascending or descending order, and then to make it easier for you to identify, I suggest that you group the numbers, similar numbers. Let's say, for example, the numbers 40, which appeared twice, the numbers 50, 50, it only appeared once. So we also have 45, which appeared 3 times. Is that correct? Okay, so let's go ahead and check. Okay, so here, as you can see, we are able to tally that 35 appeared only once, 40 appeared twice, 45 appeared 3 times, and 50 appeared 1 time. So in this case, we have the number 45, which repeats the most frequent. So what happens here is that the number, or the value 45, is the mode in this series of numbers or data. Okay, and that's what you call unimodal, because there's only one mode in this data set. Okay, so let's go ahead and remember that mode, just like what we mentioned, it repeats most frequent. So if you encounter the word mode, just remember most frequent. Mode, most, mode, most, mode, most frequent. Okay, so that's actually how it's defined. And now let's go ahead and get another data here. And from this particular example, you should be able to notice that we follow the same procedure. We arrange it either ascending or descending, and then we take note of the numbers that repeats most often. In this particular example, 30 appeared once, 35 appeared once, 50 appeared once. The numbers 40 and 45 appeared twice. So there are 2 numbers that is most frequent. Okay, so for the purpose of your lead exam, you can go ahead and call this as bimodal. Okay, however, there's actually a corruption in its definition, but later on I will show you how bimodal is displayed in statistics. Okay, but for the purpose of let, if you encounter this particular example or something similar, then the numbers 40 and 45 are the mode for this data sample, and it's called bimodal. Okay, and let's go ahead and get our third example here. So the process would still be the same. Okay, and you will be able to see here that the number 35 appeared once, and the numbers 40, 45, and 50 appeared twice. So since there are 3 numbers that appeared most frequently in this data series, or in this data, then we will call 40, 45, and 50 as trimodal, or simply you can just refer that to multimodal, or multimodal. Okay, and of course, let's go ahead and tackle another important thing that you have to remember, because even if you have a data set but there are no numbers or no data appeared most frequent, like for example in the example that we have, all of the numbers here are unique, so meaning no number was repeated. So what happened is that there is no specific number that appeared most frequent. So we call this example as none or no mode. So there's 0 mode. Okay, no mode. And just like I have promised earlier, in statistics, this is actually how a bimodal looks like. In this particular example, we have a test score here and the number of students who participated. And in this particular study or survey, they have participants who didn't study and participants who did study. And based when they already have plotted the information, they have seen that there are two curves. We'll just assume that there's since there's a gap here, we will assume that the data is sufficient enough to form a normal curve. Okay, so since in the lower part, the group where the students didn't study, you can see that there is one point that actually peaked the highest. The students that scored 30 has the highest number. It's actually beyond 20. Okay, and for the group which studied in the exam, the one that actually peaked, or the number or the score that actually repeats most often in this group, is 90. Since there are two groups here, there are also two peaks. One peak for the group that didn't study, and one peak for the group that did study. Okay, so this is actually a good example of the bimodal. Okay, so this is only for clarification, but remember, for the purpose of exam, please remember the ones I taught earlier. Okay, now let's talk about the range. What is a range? By definition, this is the area of variation between the upper and lower limits. So let's go ahead and use this example. And what we need to do is, in order for us to know the variation, we can go ahead and arrange it from the lowest to the highest. Or I think it would be, just to give you an idea, it would be a lot easier for you to look at the lowest value and the highest value, because the lowest value will be your lower limit and the highest value will be your upper limit. So that will identify the range. So if you want to know the range for for these scores that you see, what you have to do is simply subtract the upper limit and the lower limit. So you'll be able to get the range, and in this example, the range is 15. The range is from 35 to 50. Okay, so that is basically the range. So just remember, when you hear the word range, we are talking about extremes or limits. Okay, so range, extremes, range, extremes. So when do you use the mean, median, and mode? So mean is used when the data is normally distributed, the data has no outliers or extreme data, and it is also sensitive to deletion or addition of data. And the median is used with numerical values with extreme data, and it is appropriate in cases not affected by extreme values. And when do you use when the data is skewed? There's a skewed numerical data or categorical data. We will be using the mode, and of course, to identify the upper and the lower limit values, we have the range. Okay, so please do remember when to use the mean, the median, mode, and the range. So now let's proceed into some of our examples. So what should you use in this particular example? Should it be mean, median, mode, or range? Okay, you can just simply mentally respond, or you can type your response in the chat box. Okay, so here in this example, DepEd conducted a survey to determine the learner's age when they started grade 1 in all public elementary schools in the Philippines. What do you think is the measure of central tendency that you should use to analyze the result? Will you use the mean? Will you use the median, the mode, or the range? Just think about the characteristics of each so you can figure out the best measure of central tendency or the range that you will be using. Okay, so You can pause this video and you can think of your answer, and once you're ready, you can just simply unpause it. Ready? So the answer here is mean. Why mean? Okay, so remember, for the age of the students, most likely for those students who have started grade 1 in the public elementary school, they will be able to, majority of the scores will show or result into a Gaussian distribution or a normal curve, or that's what you know as the bell-shaped curve. So in this particular example, the data that we have is stable, and it will most likely show a pattern or a distribution that is normal or Gaussian. Okay, so because of that, it is stable, and of course the average or the mean will be most appropriate in this case. Okay, so let's go ahead and answer the second one. So the mean, median, mode. So there's a research conducted which resulted to the following data. It is already arranged from the lowest to the highest. So the question now is, what measure of central tendency should be used to analyze the result? So as you can see here, there are extreme scores, 5 and 60, but majority of the numbers plays within 14 to 20. So pretty much the data is almost stable, but there are actually some outliers here. Remember, when there are outliers or the data is unstable, and since the extreme scores could affect the data that you're looking for, then what do you think would be the most appropriate measure of central tendency here? Okay, think about it. You can pause this video and you can comment your answer, and then when you're ready, just unpause it. Okay, ready? So the answer would be median. Okay, why median? Because just like what I mentioned earlier, there are actually extreme values here, the 5 and 60, and of course to make sure that when you figure out the center of your data, and the extreme scores will not really affect your the information that you're looking for, then you will be using the median because it has extreme scores. Okay, and it's also a little bit skewed, so that's why you will be using median here. So let's go with our next, or our third example here. So let's again determine if it's mean, median, mode, or range. Okay, now it says here that the TCC officers collected the shirt size by all male students. They gathered the following information. So then several L's, and then we also have a couple of XL. So what measure of central tendency should the TCC officers use to determine the shirt size they should order in bulk? So what will happen here is, of course, they wanted to probably get discounts. So that's why they wanted to order in bulk. So this data is actually very useful. So what do you think should you use? Are you going to use mean, media, mode, or range? So just pause for a while. Just think about the answer. And when you're ready, just unpause it. Okay? Okay, you're ready? So the answer here would be mode. Why mode? We can use mode in this scenario because it actually involves categorical data. Why it's categorical? The categories are the sizes of the shirts: male, medium, large, and XL. Okay, so you have to decide whether whether you're looking for the medium, the large, or the XL. That's why mode is the most appropriate in this case. However, in some situations, you could also use median, because if you arrange all of the data here, you would be able to figure out that large would still be the result. However, if, for example, in the board exam, you find mode there, then you can go ahead and choose mode. And if there's no mode only and then you see mode and median, then go ahead and choose mode and median. However, if you see mode separately, you also see median separately, and you see mode and median, and the question is, what is the best measure of central tendency here, or the most appropriate? Then you have to choose mode, for a very simple reason that mode is used for categorical data, and median is usually used to determine the middlemost center, and in most cases they would require numerical data to so that we can use median, but at some point you can also use median in some categorical data. Okay, so let's go ahead and proceed to our next example. Again, determine whether it's mean, median, mode, or range. And here, there is a Republic Act 9344, or it's called as the Juvenile Justice Law of 2006, which sets the minimum age of criminal liability at age 15 years old. This means that those between 15 to 18 years old may be detained in youth centers and go through rehabilitation programs. Currently, a group recommends to decrease the age of criminal liability in youth. What should this group use to determine the age for youth to be criminally liable? Okay, I'll give you a few seconds here to think about your answer. You can pause this while you're thinking, and then just unpause it whenever you're ready. Okay, ready? So the answer here, it would be range. The reason for that is we already know that 18 years old is the legal age. Of course, for those beyond 18 years old, 18 or above, they will be subjected to the criminal law. However, we already have our upper limit here. We just simply have to gather information, or any age below 18 years old, so that this particular group can make a decision what would be the lower limit. So once you already have figured out, you would be able to get the range by subtracting the upper limit and the lower limit, or you can just simply mention the range from the lower limit to the upper limit. Okay, okay, just remember the following. So when we talk about mean, remember average. When we mention median, we have to remember it's the middlemost. And when we say mode, we talk about the most frequent. And last but not least, range, we remember extremes, or the limits. Okay, so if you need more review materials, just subscribe to my channel for more information, or join my virtual class with this particular class code. And after you join my class and you went into the lesson here for the assessment lesson 1 here, you can go ahead and take the check for understanding test, or if you want to take the assessment of learning set 1, and you also have the option to continue with the next lesson. So of course in this video you won't be able to do that, but if you join my class and went through the lessons, anything that you see that's in blue, that is actually clickable, or it's hyperlinked. Okay, so thank you so much for your time, and God bless teachers, and good luck for your licensure examination. Go ahead and get that LPT. Okay, thank you and have a great day.